If you're a weekend warrior who is struggling to get more gigs and turn a profit, this video is for you. This week I sat down with Cameron Magee, owner of a VOD3 event production. He's been in the industry a long time, and his company does over 200 shows a year. But the thing is, he started with a small single axle trailer in Central Arkansas and built his way up to a huge company working out of Northwest Arkansas. I've known him for a long time. He's the one who dragged me into live audio. He is a dear friend of mine, but has a keen business sense. Although we love to level ourselves up within live audio with new skills, being able to fly new PAs, learn more about EQ, we often neglect the business skills. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How can we put on our business hats so we can get better clients, higher paying gigs, and ultimately turn a profit so we can feed our families and not be gone all the time? Before we jump in today, I want to give you my audio math survival spreadsheet. That's found here in my audio toolkit. You can go to the link below or producedbymkc.com/audio toolkit. It's got a ton of stuff in here, but what we're going to focus on today is the spreadsheet. It's the first thing. And we could have the best gear in the world or really go for that Honda Civic sweet spot of gear. But if we can't set it up right, then it's going to sound terrible. So this spreadsheet is focused on all the key formulas you need to get great results out of your sound system. It gets you more comfortable decibels, lets you know how much power you need out of your power amp, if you need delay speakers. So make sure and grab that at the link below or producedbymkc.com/audio toolkit. So let's jump into my interview with Cameron Magee. Cameron, thank you so much for being here with me today. This is a real treat.
I agree.
Man, we've been friends for 13 years now.
13 sounds good, yeah.
Crazy. Ladies, you dragged me into live audio.
You were a very talented bass player, and you have that perfect pitch, and your ear deserved to serve more than just on the bass. So I'm glad you didn't kick and scream too hard.
Oh man, that's a whole story for another day. But I just, you and I have so much history, and that both as a friend, as colleagues, and within the business sphere. And so I thought you'd be the perfect person to talk through what it means to scale up and grow your audio career. If you're a weekend warrior, if you're maybe doing this not even as like a side gig, but you're wanting to just make it make sense more for what is happening from a value and profit standpoint when you got a couple of speakers on sticks and some subs and doing gigs.
Yeah, I don't care what scale you're at, it's got to be sustainable.
I love that.
It's got to be sustainable. So I'd love that. I'm ready to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, I want to come back to that word of value. I think that's really going to be centering for our conversation as we talk about it, because we get the question of like, I can't get my clients to pay more or pay for what I have. So I'm having to discount at the gate. That's a question I've been emailed or seen YouTube comments over for the past 3 months over and over again. So I just want us to speak directly to that of actually what's kind of under the surface of that question, because it feels a little bit not desperate, but like what's going through that person's mind when they're asking that question? How are they kind of getting that conversation wrong?
I love that. Yeah, I love value. I always define value as kind of this cross point between what it costs and what you get for it. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly brands and things that we can purchase that are maybe a high cost and maybe they're a high return. There's always the cheapest thing that you can buy. And this is in any industry or hobby or whatever. And maybe that thing breaks pretty quickly. Value is kind of that cross point between the two. And I think we all define value differently. I grew up in the church and kind of wandered up to the sound booth when I was 12. And so, when I think about value and the range that I'm viewing it in, I'm viewing it from a pretty practical level. Like I'm not coming from some international, like everything's got to be super slick or something level. I'm thinking about it at a pretty practical level. I'm not sure what more to say about that as far as it's that intersection between price and value. Is there something more there?
No, I think that's helpful just to have those tiers to think about of just, let's call it just budget. Yep. And in my mind, I call that middle one Honda Civic. It's
yes.
Like, I drive one. So like,
well, that thing's going to drive forever.
Yeah.
You could go get like a used car, maybe, and I don't know what prices are, but you could probably spend, I don't know, $5,000 on a car, but you're always going to be in the shop.
Yeah.
It's just not great. But just spending a little bit more, maybe $10,000, it's actually a reliable car.
Yep.
You could also go spend $60,000 on a new car. It's still kind of point A to point B. And so there's diminishing returns at a pretty steep scale when you start to get on the upper end. And that's fine if we're all billionaires, but I don't think people who listen to this are billionaires. I think people are saying, hey, I got to make this make sense. This is my side hustle, or this is my hobby, or I'm pulling this money out of my personal bank account, and my spouse and I are both looking at this, and this needs to make sense.
Yeah.
So I'm all about value. I'm all about that middle point.
Okay, so if we've quantified the value, let's say we've bought, in my mind, a kind of a Honda Civic brand of gear we have, like QSC or RCF, which is stuff that you guys own. Again, this is not a dog on or anything. It's like they know that their price point is priced as such compared to other stuff. Like they've positioned themselves there. So brands have done that for us for buying audio gear. How can we position ourselves better to clients? Because they have to pay us. So we can say, this is a great speaker. It's going to be a great bang for the buck and be great. But what about our value to clients? How can we communicate that better?
That's really good. What's the phrase? Like, you are what you eat. Like, I think there's a whole diet that winds like way back to like, which speakers did you buy? Like what cables or cases or whatever. And then where's your skill set level? And then what's the caliber of client that you're going for? And all that positioning needs to kind of line up. You can't just say, oh, I'm in a small market, and then run out and buy an L Acoustics rig or some Digico console. Even if that was your stuff, maybe your skill set is not aligned with that positioning, and maybe the clients in your town are not aligned with that budget. And so there's a disconnect. I think a lot of times as engineers and as people who love this, we're all passionate about this stuff. The passion can almost get in the way sometimes. We actually start kind of, if I'm positioning that as a line, like a timeline from left to right, we start with which gear we want.
Yeah.
And we go ahead and purchase it because we're Americans and we just love to buy stuff. And then we think about our personal development. And then we look up after like 9 months in our garage of tinkering and say, okay, now who's out there? And I think that's completely backwards. I think as we're thinking about value, let's skip the purchasing for just a second. Just pause it. I know we all want to buy it. Let's skip even the training, not to dog what you do and everything that you're doing to pour into people. Let's begin with the end in mind, and let's go all the way to who's actually going to be served by us. Who are we trying to quote unquote sell to? I like to say that we're going to be serving them. Who are we designing ourselves to serve? That kind of then can inform the diet in which we get there. And so again, if you've got a customer who's going to be looking for bottom Dollar General, whatever you want at McDonald's, whatever you think of, just kind of these cheapest brands, not the Honda Civic, but like McDonald's or something. I'm not trying to dog on McDonald's, but I'm just trying to think like, what's the cheapest thing?
Yeah.
If that's where they're going to be, but you come in and you're highly trained, that's a disconnect. And then if your gear is like middle of the road, we've got 3 completely different things happening now. We've got bottom bidder, very skilled, and middle of the road gear. So if they're going to be bottom bidder and that's just where you are, you've either got to find somebody else or align to that and say, okay, well, I can't spend too much on this gear or it's just not going to come out in the wash. I think where we get in trouble a lot of times in the production industry, because of that passion that I talked about, we care about it more than they do. And that's okay. Like we're the audio person, maybe who we're quote unquote selling to, or who we're trying to serve is an event planner, or they're a band, or they're a bar, or they're a local community event or whatever. They're not going to care about sound as much as we do. That's like 5% of their budget. It's 5% of their day. It's 5% of their focus. So yes, we're going to care about the sound more than they do. It's our specialty. But we have to align with and recognize like how important is that to them? And we can only match their level of care. We cannot care more than them, or there's this imbalance that we're carrying on our shoulders. It's too much pressure. It's not attainable.
Yeah. So we have 2 decisions. We either can help walk a client who we see promise into helping level up with us, or we just have to walk away knowing that they're not going to go above what they deem as the value for paying for audio anyway.
Yeah, they either need to come up or we need to walk away. I was thinking of a plan C where we go lower, but we don't want to.
No, yeah.
But often that's the pressure that they put on us in some negotiation. And then we cower from our passion. We're like, oh, okay. And but that's plan C. And that wasn't in your multiple choice options there. Plan C was not there. It was A or B. Either they level up or we go find someone else.
So what are some practical steps in that value conversation that you have with those clients who you see promise in ways to communicate that better? You and I are both big fans of the Two Bobs podcast.
Love Two Bobs.
with Blair Enns and David Baker. And Blair talks about transitioning from going from convince mode to conversations. So how can you talk about maybe a couple different phases in your career, what those value conversations have looked like when it was just you and a trailer all the way up to where we are now, of like you're negotiating national events. Like you're in 8 places at once some days. Like
crazy. Yeah, even let me just give that context for a second. So we're 11 years old as a business, but the first 2 years was just me in a little 6x12 trailer pulled behind my Buick SUV. Like not glamorous at all, but I wouldn't trade those years for anything.
Man,
because that's when I really started to learn the fundamentals of business. And what I got wrong was the first year that it was just me. I was spending all my time reading technical manuals, and that's cool, like to get better at the gear, but I wasn't getting any gigs. In fact, I wasn't going anywhere. I was spending a lot of time on the couch while my wife was going to work. I'm sitting on the couch reading technical manuals, and it's like, hey, if I'm gonna get more gigs, if I'm gonna get serious about this, I gotta start reading technical manuals and start reading business books.
Yeah.
And so year 2, reading business books, that's when we started to really scale. And I said we, like we today, but when I started to scale a little bit was realizing, okay, the client doesn't really care a whole lot. Like it was kind of a heartbreaking moment to realize like they're not going to really read a lot of the detail that we put on the quote. They're not going to check our microphone brands or something that we think they might. They're looking at the bottom dollar.
Yep.
And so what you have to do then is if that's the bottom dollar, you've got to communicate as much value as you can for that, but you cannot communicate it in terms of like, look at this brand of microphone or don't you get it? Because then you do look like this raging lunatic who's like begging them to like get it and they're not going to get it. And then you just kind of appear like, not self-aware. And then you're just the lunatic sound guy. And that was me the first year. I was jumping up and down on the table like, why won't these people hire me? But that's not what you have to do. You have to start to have those conversations and put it in more layman's terms. Like, tell me about your event. Just give me like 60 seconds talking about your event. Listen to what they talk about. And none of this is like manipulative or something. It's not trying to manipulate it. I'm starting with step 1, listen.
Yeah.
Listen to them, listen to what matters, and hang on to what matters to them. They may say, it's a couple hour event, and it's very important that when the mayor gets up or something that everybody all the way in the back can hear, and we've had trouble with that in the past.
Ooh.
Okay, great.
So you're listening to pain points.
Let's listen to that pain point, and then let's translate that. Again, you don't have to lead with, okay, well, this brand of speaker or something like that, but you can talk about, okay, great, well, probably somebody else looking at this, if they hadn't asked you that and listened, they may just put like 2 speakers on the sides of the stage. I think I can bring a 3rd and 4th speaker, or we could hoist these up a little bit. We could throw them a little further. It's maybe cost 10 or 20% more, and we can solve that problem for a little bit more if that's a problem.
Yep.
Long pause. See if it is. Yeah. And it's not manipulation. It's literally listen again. It's so funny. Sometimes I talk to people and I'm like, okay, and it may feel like, oh, that's some sales tactic. No, it's just listening. Yeah. It's just literally listening and then responding. If they're like, it's not really worth 10 or 20% more to hear in the back. Okay, great. So the people in the back need to hear the sound just matters like right in front of the stage. Yep. Okay, great. All right. Well, tell me a little bit more about your event. Okay, great. Well, the band last year was complaining that the monitors were wrong, and so we actually couldn't book them again this year. We have to get some other band. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, say more about that. Yeah, we really love that band, but they won't come back. Okay, great. Well, I can actually bring a helper with me that just focuses on monitors. Like, there's so many things you can do when you stop thinking about model numbers and gear and the technical things, which is what we're all training. Yep. It's hard when that's our diet. We're learning brilliant technical things, but then when we kind of get our head out of that book, so to speak, and go back to the normal world, we've got to speak in their language. It doesn't do any good to make them translate.
Man, that's super helpful, just of knowing that we are, as audio experts and sound humans, we're always in the middle.
Yes.
We're always a medium in which to get from what's being communicated on stage to the audience. And so take that same spirit you have in your craft and apply that to the sales conversation. How can just be a medium between that? No, I love that. So let's say you have a client that you're walking through and that you have a yearly show with them.
Yep.
And you feel like you're going to bat and be like, hey, in years past, I have been undercharging. Mm-hmm. Navigate that weirdness of like, now you're getting rid of that imposter syndrome. you're like, I am worth this amount. You go to the table, what you've listened to those pain points and you're talking through it. How do you close that? How do you, again, talk about that long pause of like that weirdness.
Yeah. I would just hit it head on. I wouldn't bury the lead, and I would, I think, what is it? To be unclear is to be unkind. There's so much just like other wisdom outside of the tech world on that stuff, but I wouldn't bury the lead, and I would lead with my intentions. That's something a mentor taught me years ago. So if I'm walking into that meeting, I'm coming in, great to see it. Thanks for taking time. Looking forward to talking about this event. Hey, right off the bat, I just want to tell you, I think I need to charge more this year, and then just shut up and stare at them, and just get that pulse. It's amazing when you shut up, they might say, we actually thought that you might say that, and we've already put it in the budget.
Wow.
Because you haven't changed your price for 3 years. And so like, we get it,
Yeah.
But what happens, human nature is, when we're worried about something, we like talk more. We get nervous and we talk. And so then we like start explaining 7 reasons why, and they already, you had me at hello,
Yeah.
So I would lead with, hey, and I hate to do this, but I think I need to charge a little bit more this year. Long pause. See what they say. They may say, well, why? I don't get it. And you can give all sorts of reasons, inflation, fuel, whatever you want, supply chain. There's 1,000 reasons right now in this month that we're recording this. But I would lead with your intentions. So open and don't bury the lead. Hey, I've got to charge more. Lead with your intentions. Hey, my intentions are to do a great job on the sound for your event, not just last year, not just this year, but for the long haul. Like I don't want to just kind of be like a high school intern or a college intern that you hired for this summer and then I'll never see you again. I'm whatever you want to say, I'm a grown ass man or something. I don't know. Like, I'm 25, I'm 30 years old, but like this is, I want to do this next year.
Yep.
I don't know what you need to say, but I want to do this for the long haul. And I wouldn't come at, this is hard for me. It's harder for me than it is for you to come and ask for more money. Yep. I wouldn't ask you if you did it. And by the way, I'm not talking about double, like soften the blow a little bit. Sometimes people panic like it's going to be double. Oh. If you've waited 3 years and then come in with, I need to double my price, that's your fault. You messed up the past 3 years. You're doing an incremental year-over-year growth. The last thing I'll say about that, and it's back to that kind of diet timeline I talked about earlier, like who are the clients, what is your skill, and what gear did you buy? Make sure that the clients that you are serving, because you had a good point, just go find different clients, depending on how big of a market you're in. Yeah. Make sure the clients you're serving are aligned with with what you want. Like, is this client a bottom dollar, like just literally doesn't give a rip about sound and is not a person who wants to improve year over year? They like, when they think about improvement year over year, they think about like, I don't know, more money or something, or like a bigger car. They don't think about the event getting bigger. Because if you're coming in with this big heart of, I really care about your event, I really care about the sound at your event, and my intention is to make that better this year than last year and better next year than this year. Yep. And to do that, we've got to have this hard conversation that the price may incrementally rise a little bit year over year. In case you haven't noticed that the prices do that sometimes, I need to do that too. Yep. Then you're all aligned on the goal is make the event better. I don't like events that don't want to get better because as a person, I'm someone who's pursuing growth and getting better. Yep. And so it's difficult for me to pour my heart and soul into something that's not trying to improve. Yep. And I think anyone listening to this is trying to improve. Absolutely. They're trying to self-actualize and grow and be all they can be in the army or whatever. Yep. And if they're trying to do that, it's difficult when the person you're doing it for doesn't care.
So you have 2 main levers you can pull if you're wanting to at least have more top line. We've talked about bottom line of like being careful with the gear you spend and like aligning that, or that mid part. So top line is I can do more shows or charge more. So let's say I've kind of met at my market. I've told myself I'm finding that what I can charge is going to be about this much. Can you talk a little bit how you grew into diversifying this type of shows that you take on? Because you do have lots of different types of clients. It's not just like we're outside at a brewery, it's a 4-piece rock band and that's it. Like talk about that journey. Yeah. So we Avad 3 today, we have, we do almost 200 events a year nationwide. So, I mean, we're all over the country now. We still do the local community events and always will. My accountant may kind of scratch their head and say like, this is a pretty big gap between like your smallest event to your largest event. And it is. It's because I'll always be faithful and thankful and grateful for the community that raised us. But
that diversity has come over time. We've kind of diversified that over time. There was a root to your question though, and I lost it thinking about diversity. You're saying
those two levers you can pull.
Yes, more volume or higher price.
More volume. And so more volume mean like there's only so many breweries in town.
Yes.
And so like how can you start to get different types of gigs? Lots more people need audio than you would just think I need to run sound for like a band.
That's
or
right.
something. And so what other avenues have you explored that and seen success with?
I love that. So when I go back to the early years, I put 2 subs, 2 mains, 4 wedges in a trailer, and
Amen.
I designed that little PA around doing youth weekends for churches.
Yep.
It was like, I want to show up at some country church and they're going to bring in a worship band for the weekend and run sound for this church worship youth weekend thing. Mm-hmm. Then that led to, well, those same youth groups probably do summer camps. So, okay, maybe I could go and sit at the summer camp. Then I got out of college and got married and was like, I can't be gone at summer camp for 10 weeks in a row.
Yep.
I've got to find other people who need good sound. So what I started doing is just paying attention to, if you kind of remove the labels of the work that you do a little bit and just look through a lens of who needs to hear, if these are all sound people, like we also do video here and lighting, but like who needs to hear, you can start to realize that those same K12s or JBL or whatever you have can get used in a lot of different ways. So find like, I remember the first time I did like the mayor's prayer breakfast. It's like his or her annual, it's a lady now, their annual, like get all the leaders of the town together in May and we're going to have this thing. Or, the Veterans Day community, downtown celebration. There's no live band at that, but somebody is going to read a proclamation or whatever the city stuff does. Yeah. So kind of get out of churches, get into the community. Beyond that, you can start to be seen a little bit by corporations, by nonprofits, by organizations who also do events, because they'll be at those things. Just heaven forbid, don't rely on like your sticker being on the side of all your cases being the only thing that networks you. Like have a business card in your pocket, smile, walk around, be seen up by the stage, and make sure that people are aware, like you're there, you're proud, you're doing this. Yep. I've always said the secret to our success at Avod 3 and scaling was just the few projects that I could get early on. I was like a clinger or something like that. Like I was so I held them so tightly and they were so precious to me. It's like, okay, these people care about sound. They want me to do a good job. I would give them 110% value every time. And that's cheesy and it's like, oh, everybody does that. No, they don't. A lot of people in the industry are just kind of phoning it in, or they're tired. They don't have the passion or the energy that I did, or maybe that this person that we're talking to does. If you give 110%, they're going to call you again. They're absolutely going to call you again. When like the chair vendor was late and like the tent vendor was, I don't know, the wrong number of tents or something, but the sound's right, it's like they're going to call you. And then a lot of people who have events don't just have one, they probably have 3. And so the next year you could do all 3 of their events. And if you'll just be a little bit business minded instead of just in the technical manuals like I was year 1, and just have the courage to ask them, hey, did you feel like the sound was good? Oh my gosh, it was great. Would you do 2 things? Would you leave me like a Google review or something? It'll take 1 minute. Here's the link. And do you have 3 friends? It's amazing how often an event planner has 3 friends. And so one event can turn into that event. That planner's 3 events next year, and those 3 can turn into 9. Yep. Just never lose sight of that 110% because you've got to take care of the ones that you have. It's a lot easier to keep a client than to get a new one.
Absolutely. Man, that's gold. I love that idea of being able to stair step with your clients and also taking initiative. A good A2 who's going to walk on stage and put that wireless in the talent's hand when it failed. And so use that initiative in those sales conversations is gold. I want to close with 2 questions. I want you to talk about the moment you felt like one of your ideal clients stopped hiring a sound company and started hiring Cameron Magee at Avod 3, that shift of like, I just don't want a vendor, I want you. Yep. And how did that feel? Yep. And then 2, what are maybe 1 or 2 resources or books that have been most influential for you that our audience can look at from just like, I just want to learn more of the business marketing stuff, just like if I want to get in that. And so talk about that switch from vendor to specific.
Okay. I may forget the second question by the end of this. So hang on to that one for me. I'm sorry. The first one, unfortunately, production's a bit of a commodity, and I hate that. But it can be commoditized if we're not careful.
Okay.
It's up to us to keep it from being a commodity. If they just look at it as I got $500 and there needs to be sound, yeah, that's kind of yes or no, check a box, black or white. Is there sound? If we can start to turn that into like, I want there to be good sound, or I want there to be sound at the back of the space that you can still hear, or I want it to be clear or no feedback, or sound that's on time, or sound that doesn't embarrass me, or sound that looks the part, then all of a sudden that's when someone says, I don't want sound, I want a VOD 3, or early on, I want Cameron.
Yep.
Where I started seeing that shift had nothing to do with gear. And I know this is going to be discouraging to everybody because we're all listening to this podcast to go buy more gear. It had nothing to do with gear. Yeah. I don't remember if I had a Yamaha console or a Behringer console or a Midas console. It doesn't matter. It had to do with me listening to the client. I'm going to always harp back on listening. The client started using words like, I feel like he just gets us. I feel like he's an extension of our team. I feel like he cares about our event as much as we do, sometimes more. So that's when that transition started to happen, is when they were like, no, we don't just need sound, like we need him. And that's when they started booking us 11 months out. And you can get booked 11 months out when you care that much. And the second one was like resources.
Yeah. So let's say like, okay, this is neat. I want to level up. I believe what you're saying, but I need more. What's a resource I could dive into that unpacks this a little bit more from a business mind perspective?
There's so much good stuff. If I was only going to do 2 things, there's a book. I don't care what you think about Dave Ramsey. He's got all sorts of opinions and content that he's done, but he has one book called Entree Leadership. Couple of chapters. I listened to it on audiobook because I like his voice. It brings it to life a little bit. I'd read Entree Leadership. Second thing I would spend time on, and a little bit of money, but mostly time, is Donald Miller. Donald Miller from StoryBrand. He has a Business Made Simple course. It's not about the $200 you spend on the online course. It's not about the time that you put into it and checking a box. It's about the action items and homework that you pull out of it.
Yeah.
And whether you're a 1-person operation, or today we're a 28-person operation, whether you have a trailer that you store in your backyard, or we have a 10,000 square foot shop, I still go back to those books. What Dave Ramsey teaches in Entree Leadership and what Donald Miller teaches in his Business Made Simple course. They're fantastic. And they shift your thinking from being a tech to being a service industry small business owner.
I love it. Man, this has been awesome, Cameron. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, where you've been, and how to help us in the industry level up the gigs we take.
I'm honored to be here. If you want to talk about gear some other time, sorry I didn't talk about gear. I'm happy to talk about that and be a gearhead too. Thanks for focusing on business.
Thanks.